Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Red Life. It is, again, an election season in Southern California and around the country, and I am doing another candidate spotlight today. Gentleman, his name is Scott Rhinehart, and he's been involved in Orange County for a number of years. He's a business owner, a grandparent, lives in the community, has been involved in a lot of efforts in the community, and he's running for assembly in the 73rd. So I'm going to bring Scott on. I really have been looking forward to having him on because he has a unique perspective, I think, to talk about things not only from a real estate perspective or as a business owner, but also somebody who himself is experiencing a multi-generational situation and the realities of today's life and how that impacts. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Raad.
I've said it to you before when we were off the air, and I'll say it to you again. How do I get rental in their office building that you're in?
I'll talk to my connections and see how we can work that out for you.
Well, for those who don't know, it's obviously a green screen backdrop, and it's a view out of the very beautiful Getty Museum in LA that's right off the 405 freeway.
Yeah.
And so, they only allow masterpieces in that place, Scott. So I guess, I'm not, maybe some of us are more worthy than others, but I really appreciate you being on it. I've been wanting you to come on for a while. In my introduction, I did say that you've been involved in things around Orange County for a while. You have a unique perspective from my position where you're involved in the real estate business. You have been around and seen the growth that we have experienced, but also because of where you're at in your life and having, kids and grandkids, and you have a unique perspective to share about how the realities of 2020 Orange County are not necessarily the same as 1985, and what that means for us in terms of everything from policy making to decisions that may impact generations to come. So welcome.
Thank you.
Take a minute for those who don't know you, and maybe give people a little bit of background about yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Scott Rhinehart. I am running for the state assembly here in the 73rd district. A little bit about my background. I was born in a coal mining town in eastern Utah. My father was a grassroots organizer for the United Mine Workers back in the day where that could get you beat up or shot by the Pinkertons. It was a really rough job. I'm one of 9 children, so my mother was very busy raising us and did a wonderful job. A lot of what I am and who I am and the things that inform my life, quite honestly, come from that coal mining town and my experiences around those union folks, where I kind of learned a little bit about how community has to take care of itself and how folks have to give a voice to those that do not have a voice. And from my mother and a lot of the other women in that coal mining town, I learned about perseverance during times of struggle, because you can well imagine there was a lot of struggle in those towns, either from coal mine accidents.
Sure.
It was devastating many times. And frankly, where I lived, I could look and see the cemetery where coal miners were buried from previous mine accidents. And my dad
very real for you, very real.
Yeah, very real. And my dad had to walk by that to go to the mine to work every day. Wow. So that was there. And that has an impact. That really does have an impact on how you look at life and how you measure life as something important. And that's been key for me.
We do tend to, understandably, it's not a comfortable thing. It's not something that you seek out, but we tend to also, I think, become victims of living in a bubble of our own making or of the environment around us. And I was born overseas. I grew up overseas, and I had bigger issues that I encountered than that the streets were not clean, or why isn't my garbage being picked up when it was supposed to be and it's half an hour later? Like, I hate it. It does sound sometimes like we complain like it's first world problems, but even here in the United States, there's still people right now today, even in Orange County. And the recent pandemic, probably, I don't know if you agree with me, but the recent pandemic, I think, has unveiled a bunch of stuff. It has also accelerated certain things that are maybe, basis of inequity or hardships, even in some place as affluent as Orange County.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you.
So how old
Um,
were you? Well, how old were you when you moved or left the mining town?
uh, I had just graduated from ninth grade, and back there it was called junior high school, not middle
Sure.
school. So the next step was to go to high school. And my dad retired from the mines, and they moved to Riverside. I don't know why they didn't continue and get us down toward the beach, but they elected to settle in Riverside, California, a nice area at the time when they settled there. The orange groves were all around that city,
Sure.
and the blooms just it was so fragrant. There wasn't the development that you see there now, so we moved there, and I went to high school at Ramona High School. Uh, if I could just touch back on my time in
Sure.
that coal mining town, if I may,
Sure.
because I think this is really important
Please.
in that coal mining town, because of the nature of coal mining and how the mining industry would go to various nations and bring back miners. I was raised in a town very multiracial, multicultural. I heard languages. I had Japanese. I heard Slavic languages, German, Welsh, Gaelic languages. And so for me, my ear became very attuned to kind of the symphony of all those voices. And it wasn't strange for me. It was quite beautiful. I went to school the with the kids from these parents, and it was a wonderful experience for me. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about different traditions, and and I would go to homes of my friends and see those traditions in the food, uh, and photos that they would bring from the countries that they had left or their grandparents had left. So that has played a role in my life that I think was very important.
I
Uh,
appreciate
for,
you. I appreciate you sharing that, Scott, because it's I forget too sometimes that I had a similar diverse background growing up because of where I was, and my father was a civil engineer, and we kind of went to where opportunities were, the same way that Riverside was not developed. I'll tell you, there were days in Abu Dhabi when we were there was not a blade of grass, and now we've got fountains that rival the ones in front of Bellagio. Kuwait was my father literally was on the first airport and infrastructure bridge in Abu Dhabi, and it was nothing but sand. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you do have this repetitive pattern where you have diversity and people that come from places. Northern California, the gold rush. You look at the people that were involved in building the transcontinental railroad. You've got multiple people, multiple cultures that come together, and I never really thought about it. And I said, I thank you for sharing that, because you think, oh, mining towns, doesn't get more white than that only, but you have diversity like your own experience. The thing that I find fascinating about this is that we live in the midst of all of this too. Like, I live in South County, and when you look around, you start looking. You got a lot of Indian community, you got a lot of Persian communities, a lot of Syrian Americans that and it's affluent and educated, and so it sort of defies or flies in the face of stereotypes that sometimes some people want to do. So thank you for
yeah.
sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. I just think it's important for folks to know a little bit about where I come from and how I find myself in this position, in this role of running for office. Because frankly, I had never seen myself in this role. I come from a kind of a social activist background, if you will. My first kind of campaigning was done in 1964. I would walk around with my dad. It was LBJ versus Barry Goldwater.
Sure.
Yep. And I actually walked and dropped material for, I think, probably to the last Democratic senator ever elected from Utah, Frank Moss. Uh, and uh, and so then I got very involved when we moved to Southern California in 1968 in the Senator Eugene McCarthy campaign at
Sure.
that time.
The big one.
And absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of moved from there. I really got kind of kicked in the butt in 1978 with the Briggs Initiative. And I don't know how many folks lived in California at that time, but that was a
Share
nefarious.
about that, because some people may not have an idea what you're referring to.
Yeah, the Briggs Initiative was a proposition that wanted to ban, at the time they used the term gay, not LGBTQ, so bear with me, I'm gonna use that terminology here. They wanted to ban any gay teachers from the California school system. But it even went beyond that. If you were a straight ally, you could have lost your job also. And at that time, it looked like it was going to pass. But this very unique individual called Harvey Milk
Yes.
came out of San Francisco, started speaking, and there were others. Clive Jones, Sally Bazar. There was a whole bunch, but the focus was on Harvey because of his role in San Francisco. And I started volunteering and walking around in the Riverside area to get that Briggs Initiative defeated. And we were able at the time to literally turn around the sitting governor of this state, Ronald Reagan, who came out against it. And that initiative was defeated by 1 million votes. And at that particular time, I said, something is happening in San Francisco. I had recently come out and I said, I wanted to go there and be a part of it. So late November, I packed up, I moved to San Francisco. I'm coming across the Bay Bridge and I'm like so excited. A whole new life is opening, new opportunities, new potential. And I'm just coming past Treasure Island on the Bay Bridge when the announcement was made that Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Milk had been assassinated. And I walked in, the joy in my heart and everything just kind of dissipated. And I finished my drive into San Francisco. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. But that night I joined, I think the estimates were 22 to 25,000 folks in a candlelight march on City Hall. And I happened to meet 5 people that night who remained my friends until they passed during the HIV/AIDS epidemic. But that really kicked me kind of into getting more involved from a social activist standpoint. And while I did focus a lot on the issues of my community, there was a lot of intersectionality with issues for women's rights, for folks in communities of color. So it kind of blossomed and expanded from there. And that's what basically was the focus a lot of my life, even when I was running my business.
So let me ask you 2 things, because again, you continue to prove what I said when I was introducing you, is that you have a unique perspective to share here, not only because of your involvement in Orange County, but just your depth of experience and happenstance exposure, maybe even, like you say, you're driving across the bridge and you go to candlelight vigil, and those are moments in life that really shape us sometimes, and we're not necessarily looking for them or planning them. Not everything is on an agenda and to-do list. I hate to tell people that live by that, but it's not the case. Life sometimes unfolds in ways that mystify you, and you look back and you go, that's exactly what was meant to happen. 2 things, Scott. One, how do you, because obviously some of these challenges that you encountered in the 60s and the 70s, kudos to Ronald Reagan for seeing where things were and coming out the way he did for that against the Briggs issue. But these are issues that we still have. We still struggle with. We're still, if anything, we are realizing more so today that what we thought were fights that were won are actually still ongoing, and more seriously than we thought. How do you maintain a sense of optimism and energy to continue to fight these fights? I only say that because some people that may be new in it may get disheartened and when they experience failure or it's not succeeding with it. So would you share some of that wisdom? How do you continue to be energized in this?
Oh, wow. Very good question. Thank you on that.
I can come back to that if you want, but I really...
No, I'd love to answer it because it's a tremendous question, and I appreciate you asking that. I mean, I have my days. I think everybody does. You have your days. And I think what for me is, and I talked a little bit about it earlier, about those those values, those core values that have informed my life from youth, and what my dad experienced as an organizer and sense of community. Those core values kind of give me strength. All right. Also, I am fortunate enough to be married to an incredible guy. We've been together 41 years, legally married since 2008. But he's there for me. If I have my down moment, he's there. And all through my life, though, that there's been a person or two who've come into it at that right moment that just have said either the right thing or done the right thing. And sometimes it was just a hug that restores you and says, yeah, we move on. And it's been that way all through my life. It could have been my sister. I'm very close to my ex-wife. She's very loving. In fact, she is the one that gave me away at our wedding. And the people laughed at that, going, "That's a weird family." Weird but loving. Okay,
I think that's very sweet, actually. It speaks to the depth of relationships that don't necessarily have to be conventional, and God knows we don't have enough. We have a lot of connectivity, especially with social media, but I don't know that we have a depth of relationships, that we did before. So I think that's a very sweet story. Not unusual, maybe, but sweet.
It is. To your point, if I may just go back a little bit on the fighting these issues. The stuff that we're experiencing right now, a lot of the hate, a lot of the anger, the maliciousness, and in a way, the cruelty that we've seen coming out of this administration. I mean, that's been building. We should not be surprised. That's been going on for decades. I mean, you can go back to the roots of that so-called Southern strategy,
right?
With Lee Atwater and the marginalization of folks who weren't white, who weren't male, using issues like the gay agenda as a wedge issue, or babies, using babies in the issue of a woman's right to take care of their medical decisions themselves. All along for decades, they've been wedged, they've been pushing us apart, further and further apart, until they manifested themselves into one Donald Trump. So we cannot, I mean, it's been a long time coming. I think the Republican Party has done themselves a disservice. And it does scare me, because I do believe that you need the checks and balances of a 2 or 3 party system so views are aired. And I think, and I may be a little off target here, so please bear with me, but I do believe that what we're seeing today is a lot of, my mother would call it, chickens coming home to roost, if you will. She was a Georgia girl, so she has a lot of those colloquialisms. But they are.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. She was feisty. 4'11", all right? 4'11". My dad was 6'4".
and we know who ruled the roost, right?
Oh yes, yeah. She was,
Well,
she did.
Scott, I agree with you, and I will say it again to people right now. I've been probably a non-party preference registered voter for, gosh, I can't even remember when I wasn't. Other than I know that the only party I was ever registered for was the Republican Party, and when I walked away from that, it's because I've seen things happening that I did not really think represented what most people are, which is fiscally conservative, socially liberal. I mean, and coming from another country where I didn't have the right to vote, not because I was oppressed, but because I was not a native, and that's just not the way the political system basically had a peaceful transition of power to it. That was something that I took very seriously. And, at the age of 18, registering or getting my green card in Kuwait at the embassy, illegal immigrant situation, the whole family, I got the green card and I was asked to register to vote for the selective service. So, it doesn't get more serious than that halfway across the planet. But I agree with you. I think the Republican Party strategically and, has committed some pretty critical mistakes along the way in who they have basically partnered up with, what they have brought in. What once was a large, big tent party approach has now become a small neighborhood, and not even a house, but probably it's a corner room, basically. And it is sad to see, because at the end of the day, like you just mentioned, I think I want to make sure that people heard it, is we are not in better place when we don't have vibrant party system. And I don't even believe that a two-party system, to be honest with you, two viable parties is the best formula. I think we need to have options for people. There are some countries where you have to have a consensus. You have to build a consensus in order to govern, right? And that, in order to build a consensus, you have to compromise. You have to basically, go to the other side of whatever aisle it is. I don't know if it's an aisle when it's multiple parties, but it, a healthy, vibrant democracy requires some of these things. And when we dwindle away or whittle at some of these things, whether it's the Southern, strategy, or and you're right, this is not Donald Trump's doing. Donald Trump is the manifestation of what's been going on. And I live in South County, right, which we used to call lovingly the Deep South at some point, right? And I live in South County, and as a former Republican living in South County as a non-party preference, I will tell you, I have seen the shift happening quietly, and in many cases on the women's side, by the way, educated women's side, for at least a decade. So where we're at today is almost feels like a coming to head of the situation. And I worry, because it's you have a chaotic environment. You don't know what's going to really happen. But tell me, what made you want to go from being very active and involved, community level, policy, across, like you said, there's parallels between the LGBTQ situation and women's rights, immigrant rights, people of color, and we live in like it or not, we live in a very diverse county and a diverse state. What made you want to put your hat in the ring? Because God knows you've been around long enough to know what that means.
Well, to be honest, to a degree, I did. You really don't know what it means
until you do.
Until you do it. It's amazing. It's a life of its own, and I wish more people would understand when they kind of like go off on politicians that it's a commitment that people who run for office do make, and it's not just a commitment for them; it's a commitment on their families, and their relationships. So, and a major commitment of time. But
why do you think I say no whenever anybody asks? I'm like, no. It's a lot more comfortable back here.
Yeah. Well, I'm up here in the Getty right now. So
this is what happens when you say no. You are sitting in the library. When you say yes, you get the Getty.
One of the perks. Oh, what in 2018? One of the issues that really drove this for me was healthcare. Healthcare for me was an issue that I think has been building in this nation. I had some experiences with a health issue where I saw how devastating it can be financially, which got me to thinking about, my God, if I am having issues financially with it, how does it impact folks making minimum wage or less?
Yep.
And so I started exploring it, and I got very involved with SB 562, and that pretty much initiated my getting into it. That we need to do something about healthcare. Of course, when you get into this, that whole healthcare issue then kind of brings to the fore other issues, and so it blossomed from there. I always knew that something was up with the environment, but I started investigating and getting closer ties with folks who had a better understanding of how global warming was impacting the district and the county that I live in, from the coast to our beautiful mountain ranges that are threatened, and to species restoration down here in South Orange County, especially with the development that you have going up along the 241 up there in the mountains. So that kind of became an issue in my campaign. So it all kind of came together, but it's initiated with the issue of healthcare And I knew it was going to be a difficult race because back then the Republicans had even a stronger hold on the 73rd district. Right now it's an R+10. It was greater back then. We ran, we got the endorsement. I made a pledge to the people that supported me that I'm not in it to be a name holder, a placeholder for the Democratic Party. We will run a campaign on issues, and we will get out there and knock on doors, and we did. And we did that campaign with $67,000
Wow.
and got 44% of the vote of that. That was unheard of for a Democrat.
Mhm.
And we had good people running, all grassroots volunteers, all getting out there, knocking on doors. We did the poppy drop. We did a lot of things very creatively to try to get our name out there.
Right.
And so that kind of built it and set us up for this cycle.
Mhm.
And this cycle, admittedly, is a little different. We are raising more money than any Democrat has ever done in this district. Our opponent is not that far ahead of us. Last time I checked, it was about $76,000. And we actually have more donors than she does, but she's getting very big donation from developers, the big corporate PACs. So we are running a full force race out here. We got incredible field director, Linda May, who's put together a program. We know exactly where we have to go at the street level to what houses to get our votes out. So
how's the difference? I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but it's worth just asking every candidate, like, how is it different, especially if they've run before, or they've been involved in campaigns before. What's been the negative or the challenge, if you will, and what's been sort of an interesting, surprising reality out of running in this cycle with the pandemic, which has really limited the way you traditionally would run?
Well, in the first campaign, you could run as a stealth candidate because my party and the Republican Party, we weren't on their radar. We didn't give them especially the Republican Party, we didn't give them any restless nights. A little different this time. People do take notice, and so that's kind of the upside of it. The donations are coming in. We get a lot of support. Congressman Mike Levin endorses very early. Great guy. He was instrumental.
Mike a lot. He's my congressman. I like him.
Mike, and we got to keep him there. Mike is just one of the good guys. Okay, one of the good people. Katie Porter also. What she's done here in the 45th is just remarkable. And being a union guy, of course, I went to the unions, and the unions have been helping me, and I do appreciate with a calling with donations. But a lot of groups like the affinity groups like Equality endorsed us, Planned Parenthood. So we were able to get those folks and present to them, we're going to run a full-throated campaign. We're going to be out there. We can do this. We can win this. And this is our path to victory. And we could share with them what it was. And I think when you do that, that people buy into it.
Well, candidates get one shot at being unknown and not on record. And whether you are running for city council or the dog catcher, or if you're president of the United States, you get one run when you're not officially on record, and after that, you're on record.
You're on record.
So it's a totally different second time around. I've got way too many hours of being on record. That's what I'm telling you. I'm like, yeah, I can't run because I've got an opinion on everything of it. But I think it's been interesting to see how creative people have gotten. Like this evening, there's actually Chris Duncan, who's running in city council in San Clemente. He's having a virtual event, and Congressman Mike Levin's going to make an appearance. People have activated into virtual town halls, even at the national level. So it's fascinating to me from a person on the outside that what used to be, I would show up at candidates forums and the candidate would be given 1 minute or less to answer a very complex question with multi-layers and multi-areas of impact. And thank you very much. Sit down now, the next person. And we may look at this period right now as being problematic because it has rattled the normalcy of how we do things. but it also provided an opportunity to look at it and go, well, maybe there's a better way to do this. And if I can sit down with gentlemen like you and have an hour or whatever of conversation, it's a heck of a lot more meaningful to then be able to say, I vote the person and the issue, because I've actually spent time delving into the person, their background, their philosophy. Nobody can take it for an hour, Scott. For a minute, in front of a room full of people, hidden in the complexity of other people that are on the stage, heck yes, no problem. But to sit in front of a camera and be visible for an hour and talk about a myriad of subjects, very difficult to not be authentic.
Yeah, and I will say with you, I have they teach you about his speech impediment. I do too. I was a kid, I had it, and it comes out frequently, the soft mouth. So bear with me, please. That I think that's important. It's difficult in 1 or 2 minutes to share from the heart.
Right.
And especially when you have folks in your campaign, you got to get this across. You got to get this across. I'm fortunate enough to have folks working and volunteering in that campaign that from the beginning just said, let Scott be Scott. Yep. And that's all I can be. That's all I can be. And I do believe that folks find that relatable. Like right now, I genuinely appreciate this time. I haven't had this amount of time to just speak and talk to folks. And I've enjoyed it. It's been relaxed. I've been feeling comfortable to share some very personal stuff. And I really appreciate the opportunity for that.
Absolutely, buddy. And I'm getting a sense that maybe you've got something else lined up that's coming up that you need to go to. So
yeah.
I appreciate it. No, you told me in advance, and I appreciate you giving me a signal there. I appreciate it too, honestly. And I think for people who are interested in finding out more about you, I do plan to have you back on one way or the other. So we will have another chance to talk for sure. Please check out Scott's website. It's right there, Scott73rd.com. And you're pretty out there on social media too, so the people can get a sense of you. Please come back anytime. And
do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate the share, the genuine share, and from the heart. And thank you for giving us a little background about your childhood. I think that is important because it speaks to the we talk about it kind of almost like a cliche, a person's character and their upbringing and the things that shape them. But it really is meaningful to me. So I'm sorry I'm not in your district to vote for you, but I do urge other people who are to do that. So,
well, I know a good realtor who could get you down here in a new home real quick.
You know what? You know what? We didn't talk about it, and when you come on next time, I do want to talk about this because I mentioned a little bit, but about real estate, affordable housing, seniors, multi-generational households. I really would love to have you on to talk about that. If you can find the time between now and the elections, would love to arrange it, by the way, Scott, and just be very focused on that because it's a reality that we are facing nationwide, but also we are not void of it in Orange County. And to your answer, I'm comfortable living 3 miles away from my dad, who's 84, and being able to be there for him. And as much as San Clemente has its very engaged community, which I love, I'll rather have an engaged community than an unengaged one. But we do sometimes act and feel like an extended dysfunctional family. But I love it down here. So for now, the time being, I will keep that number handy, but I will not be using it.
If I made 2 parting shots when I leave,
sure.
My best to your dad. Okay, please. And second, the 19th, last day to register to vote. You can still, however, vote conditionally, and be sure to check your voter pamphlet. But the 19th, last day to register, it's critical. Get out and vote, folks. It's your voice. Make it happen and make it heard.
To your point earlier too, just to give credit and acknowledge people that do put themselves in the barrel of in front of the barrel of the cannon, if you will. The people who step up and actually run, the people that are willing to serve, regardless of the side of the aisle it is, regardless under what thing. That is, I want to say thank you to every single person that basically steps up, because it is a major commitment. It is also, regardless where your political bend may be or how you lean, I believe that 90%, if not 100%, maybe 98% of the people that run their heart is in the right place, at least from where they're coming from, to be of service to others. So I thank you, my friend, for putting yourself out there. Thank you for all the years of being of service already. Wish you luck with your race, and the invitation still stands. If you can make time for me between now and the election, let's come talk about affordable housing and seniors and multi-generational housing.
It's going to happen. I'll make sure. I'm going to speak to the scheduler, check our calendar. Yeah, I want to come back because I know there was a lot of issues that we wanted to talk about. Thank you for this opportunity so much.
My pleasure. And everybody go out there, register Monday, the 19th, last day to register to vote. Find a way to vote. Don't care who you vote for, but exercise your right as an American citizen. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Take care.
You too, my friend. Bye-bye.